y'all, it's Bart. Welcome to Soccer for Us, where we talk about U.S. soccer. On this episode, I am going to preview the U.S. Women's National Team's Summer Series. They'll play 3 matches against some decent competition as they gear up for the 2020 Summer Olympics. That's right, it's still the 2020 Summer Olympics, just delayed a year. That kicks off in late July in Japan. So this set of games is very crucial for Vlatko Andonovski to figure out who his final 18 players are for that roster. But before we get into that, I do have to ask you to please follow the show on Twitter. Follow us at Soccer4UsPod. Tweet me your reactions, your responses. I appreciate everyone who's been interacting with the Twitter account in the past week or so. I feel like, we're finally building that community on there. Also, make sure you subscribe to Soccer Down Here on whichever podcatcher you use. You will get the daily Soccer Down Here show, which, sometimes I make appearances on there. And you will also get every episode of Soccer for Us, as well as some other great content that comes out from that network. Also, I'm going to ask you to please check out the fundraising page listed in the show notes and added to the tweet for the show. It's for Soccer in the Streets, a local nonprofit here in Atlanta that works to provide kids of all socioeconomic status, whatever. It gives them a chance to play soccer for free and gives them a chance to learn about, life skills that they may not have another opportunity to learn, both through soccer and also through development programs. I am participating in their charity soccer tournament this summer called ATL Nations Cup. I am competing for Team USA. And basically, it's just a charity event where we go out and pretend to play soccer and not get hurt. And the most important work comes off the field, where we try to raise money for this wonderful organization. My team, Team USA, has done pretty well in the fundraising. And I'd like to say I've done pretty well in my fundraising as well. But we can always use your support. It's not about necessarily winning the fundraising battle or meeting a goal, because the goal is always more money to help more kids play soccer for free in Atlanta. So again, check that out in the show notes. It's my.soccerstreets.org/USA21. But again, I'll include that link in the show notes and the tweet for this episode. All right, so let's discuss the Women's National Team Summer Series. So a lot of times in the summer, and this summer was supposed to be one of those, the U.S. women will host what they call the Tournament of Nations. And that is a series of 3 friendlies with teams from non-European countries to play a concurring series of matches against the UEFA Women's European Championships. Obviously, the UEFA Women's Euros are not happening this summer because of the COVID pandemic that has postponed everything. The men are taking the showcase this summer, and the women will play next summer. So instead of that, we have this summer series that U.S. Soccer has put together. They found a sponsor and everything. Great for them, and good for the U.S. Women's National Team, because it gives us 3 friendlies that are going to be a little bit competitive. Like I said, 3 friendlies, 3 teams, so a total of, 9 friendlies, 6 friendlies? Yeah, 6 friendlies, I think. That sounds right. I don't do math. I talk and I write for a living. 6 friendlies in this summer series. So the schedule is Thursday, June 10th at 8:30 p.m. against Portugal. Sunday, June 13th at 10 p.m. against Jamaica. And Wednesday, June 16th at 9 p.m. against Nigeria. Obviously, as I said, the reasons is basically this fills in for that Tournament of Nations slot that doesn't happen this summer. However, the real reasons are threefold. And Vlatko Andonovski talked about this when he released the training camp roster, which we will get to in a second. But the biggest one is that he has to winnow down this roster. He invited 23 players to camp. He has invited upwards of 25, 27 in the past this year. But you only get 18 for the Olympic tournament. So you have 3 games in a very short amount of time. It's a rough tournament, to be quite honest. You have 3 games in the span of 6 days, and then you go into knockout rounds. You only get 18 players. You have 2 goalkeepers and 16 field players. So Vlatko has a lot of decisions to make because the U.S. is very deep, and there are a lot of players who honestly, you think that they're locked in starters, and that's true, but there are a lot of players that you could say that about. I mean, you look at the midfield alone, and there are 4 ladies who you would think are locked in. One of those, Julie Ertz, is hurt and will miss this camp and could possibly miss the Olympics. It's not for sure there, but this is Vlatko trying to figure out who fits best at which positions and what his depth he can bring is. So that is the biggest reason. Figure out what that 18-player roster is for the Olympics. The second is I mentioned that short match day window. This mirrors the cadence of the Olympic schedule. That word cadence was used again by Vlatko. I'm wondering if Ernie Stewart himself, who's over the competitive programs, didn't use that, and that's just kind of what they've parroted. But you have a game Thursday, Sunday, Wednesday, which is the exact same schedule that the U.S. women will play in the Olympics. They will play on a Thursday, a Sunday, and a Wednesday. So it mirrors that. And then the last one that Vlatko said is that this definitely helps plan for the future, which I think is a good tip of the hat to maybe the fact that he's going to bring some more experienced players to the Olympics. But the players in this training camp and the players who have been in training camp this year are not necessarily cast away. They're still part of the future of the women's national team program. I mean, the Olympics are this year. You have 2 more years until the Women's World Cup in 2023, and you have some important competitions before then, such as the World Cup qualifying. So you're going to have matches that are going to be important for the U.S. women's national team, and just because you don't make the Olympic roster this year doesn't mean that you're not a part of the plans going forward. And I think that's smart of Vlatko to very much say that. So that's a little bit of a look at the WNT Summer Series. Very glad that U.S. Soccer was able to put this together. Now, let's look at the roster that Vlatko Andonovski has assembled for this training camp and series of games. Like I said, Vlatko called in 23 players. 3 of those goalkeepers, Jane Campbell from Houston, Adriana Franch from Portland, and Alyssa Nair from Chicago. 3 players who have been in U.S. camps before, have been a part of U.S. teams at competitions before. I will say that even before this, I'm going to just lock in Jane Campbell and Alyssa Nair as the 2 goalkeepers going to Tokyo. I really think that Campbell has established herself well in NWSL and has established her well with Vlatko in this camp. So I think Nair still is the number 1. I don't know, if she's necessarily being unseated in that position, but Jane Campbell has been a part of just about every training camp under Vlatko Andonovski. I think she's your number 2. Adriana Franch, however, has been a part of the U.S. women's national team before. She did make the cut and went to France in 2019, even though she didn't really play. And I don't think she made the matchday squad for any of those matches. So, she has definitely been a part of it, but it always feels like Adriana Franch has been kind of the last one included, or the also ran, if you will. I really just think that Jane Campbell and Alyssa Nair offer the best goalkeeping potential, but Franch has been good for Portland this year, and I think that does need to be said. She's been very good for the Thorns, who won the NWSL Challenge Cup and are doing pretty well in the season right now. So, defenders, 8 of those in this camp, and I do think that there are definitely some locked-in starters, but there's a lot of depth that needs to be had in the back line and a lot of versatility, and I'm interested to see who Vlatko values the most. Those defenders are Alana Cook, who is fresh off winning Ligue 1 Feminine in France with Paris Saint-Germain. She is now on loan to OL Reign in Seattle. Abby Dahlkemper from Manchester City, Tiana Davidson from Chicago, Crystal Dunn at Portland, Kelly O'Hara from Washington, Margaret Purse from Gotham FC. That's weird to say Margaret. Midge Purse from Gotham FC, Becky Sauerbrunn at Portland, and Emily Sonnet at Washington. All of these women have been in camps before. All these women have caps for the U.S. national team. I do think that you're looking at Cook, Purse, and Sonnet as the ones fighting for a spot on the Olympic roster. I think Davidson, Dahlkemper, Dunn, O'Hara, and Sauerbrunn are pretty much locks, but Davidson will be interesting because she's kind of the third woman in that center back pairing. She kind of can play left back. Obviously, you still have Crystal Dunn, who's being deployed as a left back, but is really much more of an attacking midfielder in her club days. But it's a very established group of defenders and 8 women who have their work cut out to prove that they're ready to go to Tokyo, even though I think all of them really could, and all of them would be great additions to this team and great members of the roster, no matter who goes. And that's the struggle that Vlatko has to make these decisions, especially in the defense, is a very deep squad. Vlatko did call in 6 midfielders. Again, Julie Ertz is not in this squad. She suffered a strain to her knee, strain to a knee ligament, and she is not in this squad. And I don't know if she'll be back in time for, or back healthy and back fit enough in time for the Tokyo Olympics. The last update that I really saw from her was that it was going to be a few weeks because of a right MCL sprain, at least a month. I think you have to say that it's possible she could be back for the Olympics. If she's even 70%, I think she goes. But that brings me to talk about these midfielders, because one who has a lot to gain from this is in this squad. So Lindsay Horan from Portland, Rose Lavelle from OL Reign, also Manchester City, Katarina Macario from Lyon, Christy Mewis from Houston, Sam Mewis from North Carolina Courage, and Andy Sullivan from Washington. So Andy Sullivan is the one I really want to highlight, because I think the other 5 are, I want to say, locks for Tokyo. I think the only ones that you're looking at are maybe Christy or Katarina, depending on how much depth and versatility and where that versatility comes from Vlatko. But most of these women are pretty solidified in their spot for the national team. Andy Sullivan has always been kind of left behind because she plays a similar position as Julie Ertz. And Julie has been very durable, extremely reliable, and incredibly productive for the women's national team. Now, I don't think Sullivan is the offensive threat necessarily that Julie Ertz is, especially on set pieces and stuff like that. But I think Andy Sullivan does offer a similar ability to close down the midfield. She's not as dominant as Julie Ertz. No one is. That's like saying that, someone's not as prolific a goal scorer as Leo Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo. Of course they're not. But I think Sullivan has a lot to prove to Vlatko, especially if he's going to have to factor in the fact that Julie Ertz may not be fully healthy in the Olympics in July. So Andy Sullivan has a lot to prove at that kind of holding midfielder role. I think she can be very much involved in the attack and build-up play the way Vlatko likes. I'm curious to see how she does in the defensive setup. But, I think overall she has the potential to fill in for Ertz quite well. Other than that, look, Lindsay Horan, Rose Lavelle, they're probably going to Tokyo as long as they're all healthy. Sam Mewis also probably going. And I honestly would like to see Horan or Mewis play in that holding midfielder role, because I think that they could offer similar defensive bite, but would really be a great offensive attacking weapon out of that holding midfielder role, really be able to pivot from defense to offense quickly. But I think this group of games is really for Andy Sullivan to shine, or at least prove that she can do the job or not do the job. And then obviously, when it comes to Christy and Katarina, I'm very curious how Vlatko allocates those minutes, because both of those ladies are good attacking players. Katarina is an incredibly creative attacking force, and she also can play center forward. And that's why I keep advocating for her to be on this Olympic roster. I know that Carly Lloyd is probably the odds-on favorite to be the backup to Alex Morgan at the Olympics. But the fact is, Alex Morgan is back on track, and we'll talk to her when we get into the forwards position. So why not bring someone like Katarina Macario, who can offer versatility, not just in the way she plays, but in the position she plays, and add, it's a great offensive threat to have coming off the bench. She can score from range, she can pass, she can score up close, she can combine. She's a very all-around gifted attacker, and I'd love to see her really play a lot of minutes in this series so that she can show how good she can be. And then Christy Mewis has just been a great story coming from Houston last year, especially during it really was a year of resurgence for Christy Mewis. 2020 was. She and Houston win the Challenge Cup. She shows out scoring a lot of goals, getting a lot of assists, and finally makes her way back onto the national team and proves it at that level that she can score and assist as well. So those are your midfielders. Looking at the forward line, you have 6: Carly Lloyd from Gotham FC, Alex Morgan from Orlando, Kristen Press from Manchester United, Megan Rapinoe from Al Rain, Sophia Smith from Portland, and Lynn Williams from North Carolina. Now, again, Tobin Heath not included, which is another reason why I would like to see Katarina Macario included in the final roster, because that gives you another creative player. I think we've seen that Rose Lavelle, if you need a creative winger, could play on the wing. I think Macario could probably fill that as well. So let's talk about Carly Lloyd, because I'm backing off a little bit on my campaign to not have Megan Rapinoe in the Olympic squad, mainly because I think Rapinoe gives us something that no one else can give. She's great delivering on set pieces. She can score from a set piece. And she's still a great passer of the ball and a great crosser of the ball. And I think those are valuable pieces, especially against teams like New Zealand and Australia, who are pretty defensively sound. And Sweden, we are playing them again. But against teams like New Zealand or Australia, especially New Zealand, where we are clearly better, I think the defensive worries of Megan Rapinoe they're not as high. So you would like to have an attacking talent like that, especially someone who, as I said, can score from set pieces, score on the run of play, drop dimes for players to score as well. I'm shifting this attention to Carly Lloyd because she's been, okay. She had a really good NWSL Challenge Cup. She's been okay in the NWSL season for Gotham. I just go back to the fact that Alex Morgan is now leading the NWSL regular season in goals. She has scored for the U.S. women's national team in the past games that she's played. And she's the number one striker. She's starting at that center forward position, and she gives you so much more than what Carly Lloyd can give. And you saw it so drastically in those April friendlies. There were times that Carly Lloyd was half jogging, half walking around for minutes at a time. She's not effective in the press the way that Alex Morgan is. Morgan holds the ball up better than Lloyd. She is better at towing the offside line than Lloyd. She's also better at combining in tight spaces than Lloyd. I'm sorry, that's just a fact. Alex Morgan is at this point a better player than Carly Lloyd. That's okay. So my issue with Carly Lloyd is, why are you bringing someone who can only back up someone at one position? And it's someone who at that position, honestly, Kristen Press or Lynn Williams can also play centrally in that front line. So is it as important to have Carly Lloyd to just back up Alex Morgan when you have Katarina Macario, who could play as an advanced attacking midfielder, as a center forward? You have Kristen Press, who could play left, who could play centrally. You have Lynn Williams, who could play right, who could play centrally. I really want to see not Carly Lloyd playing in this series of games. You have 3. I really don't want to see Carly getting more than 90 minutes. I'm sorry, that's really harsh, but I want to see who else can fill that center forward position. Alex Morgan should start, but I don't want Carly Lloyd to just be her automatic sub. I want to see Lynn Williams at the 9. I would love to see Macario at the 9, and just really test out who can really play a second position, because Carly Lloyd can't play a second position. And when you only have 18 spots in a roster, you have to pick 18 women who can play at a top level at their position at which they're supposed to be playing, but also provide adaptability and play, in another position at a very good level as well. And it's tough. Look, the U.S. women's national team is the deepest national team in the world. I'm saying, like, men, women, I think we're the deepest because there's so much talent at every position. Sure, Germany is really deep. Brazil is really deep. But, the way the women's national team, it's no joke that you could field probably 2 women's national teams and one would win and one would probably finish in the top 8. It's just a fact. Well, it's not a fact. It's a reality that the U.S. has a lot of talent and a lot of depth. So with Carly Lloyd, I'm still frustrated because we're at 2021. She's on the wrong side of 30 by a good bit. She's almost at 40. She's not in the future plans at all. And I know that this might be her swan song, but is it worth it if you don't actually win the thing? And that's where I would ask Vlatko is, do you think Carly Lloyd can still help you win a medal this summer in Tokyo? If you think she can, then whatever. I do just think that there are better players who can help you achieve that goal. So that's the 23-player roster. Again, just to run down kind of my thoughts about this, it's a huge opportunity for Andy Sullivan. I do find it interesting that Casey Murphy is dropped for Adriana French, but French has seemed to play better in this NWSL season. I still think that both of those ladies were competing for the number 3 spot and ultimately the last one out of the Olympic roster. But we'll see. French could surprise me. She could get some minutes. I do want to see multiple keepers playing in this series. So let's keep to that. I think the biggest question in the back line is which fullbacks can find a place on the 18-player roster, because there's a lot of fullbacks. And really, I think the only one that's locked in for sure is Crystal Dunn. Other than that, I don't know who's really locked in. Kelly O'Hara maybe on the right side, but if Midge Purse can outshine her in a very similar type of way, player anyway, I'd be interested. And then you have Emily Solent, Alana Cook, and Tierna Davidson, who can give you the ability to play centrally as well as a fullback position. So those are some interesting notes about what I think Vlatko is going to be looking at on that defensive line. I think it's important to point out that there are a lot of NWSL scorers on this team. Alex Morgan, I mentioned, is the season league leader. She's got 4 goals and an assist. Sophia Smith with 2 goals. Crystal Dunn with a goal. Lindsay Horan with a goal and an assist. Christy Mewes with a goal and 2 assists. Mitch Purse with a goal. Megan Rapinoe with a goal. Lynn Williams with a goal and an assist. There's a lot of attacking talent here that are in a fairly decent form. So, it's early in the NWSL season, but comparatively, I know they had the Challenge Cup, but we're talking about the season here. So I think it's nice to just see these women playing well right now, especially as you go into the Olympics, but also because that means that you don't really have a question mark about, is there anyone else? I think these are your best forwards that you could bring up right now, save a couple that I won't get into, but Haley Mason on this roster or whatever. I don't know if that was going to be, but I would have liked to seen it. Anyway, I'm interested to see how much Vlatko allots to Lloyd and Pino, because I think that'll be very telling on if they will make the Olympic roster. If they're playing a lot, then they're probably going to be in Tokyo. If they're not playing a lot, Vlatko's seeing other players, at least seeing if other players can perform above the level that Lloyd and Pino have set, which is a high level. Like, that's the thing. Lloyd is already, like, if Carly Lloyd's playing as your 9, you're at a pretty high level. Can someone surpass that? I really also want to see how Sophia Smith and Lynn Williams trade off, because they're both very good right-sided players. Not necessarily the same, but both players who are good on the dribble and good running after the ball and behind defenses. So really interested to see how Sophia Smith and Lynn Williams split their time during the series. And then this is something that I would just love to see is I mentioned Andy Sullivan. She's probably going to be at the bottom of a midfield a lot, but I really want to see Sullivan at the bottom and Macario at the top. And then I don't really care who that third player is, but I'd like to see that from this camp. All right, let's look at the opponents. I'm just going to go through some notes that I have on all of them to kind of help you get acquainted with the 3 teams that we will face in this summer series. Hey y'all, it's Bart. I got my Play Like a Girl USA scarf from American Futbol Provisions, and I got to tell you, it is awesome. Much better looking in person than I thought it even would be. It is great. I enjoyed wearing it when I watched the U.S. during their April friendlies, and I cannot wait to wear it while watching the U.S. go for gold in Tokyo this summer. American Futbol Provisions is a soccer apparel company created for supporters by supporters of the beautiful game. Their mission is to support all levels of professional soccer in the U.S. and promote a culture of respect and inclusion. You can celebrate all past, present, and future female American footballers with this Play Like a Girl scarf from American Futbol Provisions. Pick yours up today at AmericanFutbolProvisions.com or browse their extensive collection of fan-made football accessories. That's AmericanFutbolProvisions.com. So first up on Thursday, June 10th, it'll be an 8:30 p.m. Eastern kick from BBVA Stadium in Houston. It is Portugal. Now, Portugal is not one of the top tier European teams. They are right now ranked 29 in the world, which by European standards is pretty low, to be quite honest. Head coach Francisco Neto and his squad missed out on the 2019 World Cup, and they also missed out on qualifying for the 2022 Women's Euro Championships. They lost, they finished second to Finland in Group E and then lost to Russia in the playoffs. So this is not one of the better European teams, and that's a little disappointing that I say this not in a bad way, but I wish we could have found a better team. But this team does have a lot of technical ability. They're going to play similarly to Spain and Italy and pass the ball well and move well. And I think maybe for that reason, Vlatko wanted to see his team against, a possession-based team. Most of these women play in the Campeonato Nacional Femenino, which is the Portugal top women's league. 7 of them play at Benfica, who played in the Women's Champions League this year. 6 play for Sporting, which is the other big club. So that's, 13 players, and the other 10 play kind of around Europe, and 1 plays here in NWSL. So I want to point out the Silva forwards, Diana and Jessica Silva. Jessica plays here for Kansas City Women's Soccer in NWSL. And she and Diana are pretty good forwards for the Portuguese national team. I think they'll be the ones that are most likely to cause problems for the U.S. And also just need to shout out Claudia Neto, who is the captain with 131 caps. She plays for Fiorentina in Italy, and she's been there for a very long time. And is she's the captain. She's got the most caps. She's got the second most caps, I think, all time in Portuguese women's football history. So just want to shout out Claudia Neto for being there as long as she has been. So that is Portugal on June 10th. So June 13th, that is a Sunday. This will also be at BBVA Stadium in Houston. A 10 p.m. Eastern start for some reason. I don't know why U.S. Soccer did this to us, but we're going to have to be up late on a Sunday to watch this women's national team friendly against Jamaica. Now, Jamaica was a fun, wonderful story of the 2019 World Cup and the Concacaf women's qualifying campaign. Jamaica are currently ranked 51 in the world. This is the lowest ranked team in this quadruple, in this quartet, of teams for the series. They're still fighting to get funding for their program. They're still fighting to get the respect from the Jamaican Federation. And I do think that this is one of those ways that the U.S. Soccer can really help them, is give them some time to play on a big stage in front of national audience, in front of a big crowd in Texas. That's very good for Jamaica and their players. Head coach Hugh Menzies is actually a former U.S. women's national team youth assistant. He's been there since 2015. Really been a good, steady hand to help guide the Reggae Girls to they're solidly the 4th best team in CONCACAF. They're behind Costa Rica, and that's a fine place to be. That's where their men are. It's pretty okay to be in that position. They have 5 players in NWSL and 6 players at U.S. universities. The rest kind of play all over the map. I'm really hoping that Jamaica can just show competence, and that sounds really bad, but just show competence, show some fight, show some technical ability, and prove to their federation that they're worth the investment, because they are. They're a fun group of girls to watch. They are using the U.S. system very well, and I think that's a great tool for them, because Jamaica and U.S. have a fairly decent relationship. They are using the college system. They can use the pro system, and with all the women's secondary leagues opening up, it's a great opportunity for them to help populate these lower level women's teams and leagues, and even our top level teams, to round out and improve the quality of play in the United States, and improve the quality of play for their women's national team. So, like I said, 5 players in NWSL, 6 in U.S. universities. Look, if you're going to pick a team outside the U.S. to kind of prop up in CONCACAF, I would say pick the Reggae Girls, because they need the support from everyone. And then last is Wednesday, June 16th. This one will be a 9 p.m. kickoff from Q2 Stadium in Austin, Texas. The first time a U.S. team will play in this beautiful new stadium. I really want to go to that stadium in Austin. It is the U.S. versus Nigeria. Now, Nigeria is this strange team. They are unquestionably the best women's team in Africa, probably the best men's team in Africa when you look at it top to bottom, but they are absolutely the best women's team in Africa. They are the thrice reigning Women's Cup of Nation champions. They won it in 2018. The next one comes up in 2022. They have made all 8 Women's World Cup final tournaments. There's only a handful of teams that have done that, and Nigeria is one of them. So I do credit the Nigerian Federation and their people for supporting the Nigerian women's national team, and I credit the women in Nigeria for making way for themselves and finding themselves actually in a lot of European leagues. It's been nice. They are coached by Randy Waldrum. He has been there since 2000. He is a name that you should know if you're a U.S. soccer fan. He is a former American college coach, coached a lot of men's and women's teams, mostly women's teams in the U.S. He also coached the Houston Dash from 2014 to 2017, and at that same time was the head coach of Trinidad and Tobago's women's national team. He actually was previously the program director, technical director, if you will, of Nigeria. He quit the job in Houston, kind of was let go from Houston, and moved to this technical director role at Jamaica. They offered him the job. He turned it down, and he ended up going to be the head coach at the University of Pittsburgh in 2018. Well, now he's back with Nigeria, so he should know the players. He should know the program. He should know the culture very well. And honestly, right now, Nigeria ranked number 38 in the world. They are, again, the best team in Africa. There's a lot of room for improvement when it comes to FIFA rankings and all that. And this stuff can help. Playing friendlies like this against the U.S. and against other high-ranked teams can help you in the women's FIFA world rankings. And Nigeria, I think, deserves to itself to try to move up as high as they can in the rankings and test themselves against better competition outside of Africa. 10 of these players play in the Nigerian Women's Premier League. 13 play outside of the country. Most of them play in Spain, and the rest also, most of them in Europe of some sort. So it's a pretty good team, actually, pretty experienced roster that Waldrum has called in for this, a good mix of experience and promising youth. But I don't think anyone on this roster that I remember is incredibly inexperienced. So Waldrum is definitely looking at this as a way to evolve his team. They missed the Olympics. Zambia is the team that qualified out of Africa. Interestingly, weird how they picked that. They had the Olympic qualifying tournament back in 2020. Zambia beat Cameroon in the final. Nigeria got to the third round of the bracket before losing to Ivory Coast. So definitely a shock to the system of the Nigerian women's team. They're used to winning almost everything in Africa and certainly qualifying for Olympics like this. So a good reset time for Randy Waldrum and the Nigerian women's team. So those are the 3 teams that we're facing in this summer series that U.S. Soccer has put together. Again, that's Portugal, Jamaica, and Nigeria. 3 teams from 3 different confederations, a good mix of styles. And, I don't know if these are the best teams to prepare for the Olympics, but they're pretty okay teams to have to play in a series of friendlies like this. All right, before we get out of here, I do just want to run through some U.S. soccer news. So bear with me as I get through that. First, want to talk about Concacaf World Cup qualifying. We have completed round 1. We are now into round 2. Round 1 was 6 groups of 5 teams. One got dropped down to 4, but 6 groups of 5 teams. And so that's 30 teams for those of you keeping track at home. Now we have the 6 group winners facing off in the second round in a 2-legged playoff series. Group A winner, El Salvador, will face off against surprise Group F winner, St. Kitts and Nevis. Now, they bested Trinidad and Tobago in that group. Trinidad did not have a good qualifying run. I would be very surprised if Terry Fennick is still that coach of that program for a while longer, because not making it out of the first round is pretty bad for Trinidad and Tobago. The second playoff is Group B winner Canada versus Group E winner Haiti, a rematch of the 2019 Gold Cup quarterfinal in which Haiti beat Canada. That was a shock for Canadians because Canada came into that 2019 Gold Cup really riding high. They had Alphonso Davies, they had Jonathan David, they had a lot of good talent on that team, and Haiti bested them. So now you've got a two-legged series. I don't think Canada will be able to play at home. I'm interested to see where they announce that game being because I haven't seen it. But Canada versus Haiti will be a nervous one for Canadian fans to watch, but I do expect Canada to make it through that playoff. And then the last playoff is Group C winner Curacao versus Group D winner Panama. This one for me is the most fun matchup because Panama is a regular in the hexagonal or the final round of World Cup qualifying. They're consistently not the best team in CONCACAF, but always in that second group. And Curacao has been, over the past half decade, they've been really improving the investment of their program, the development of their players, and they've had a really strong national team. Kind of pulling from some former, some guys who have some Dutch heritage. It's okay. But they are definitely the one program in CONCACAF that is most on the come up. So Curacao, Panama, and that CD playoff. All these matches will be played over the weekend. You'll have them on June 12th and 15th. It's, again, a home and leg series. The winners of those series go as the three teams to qualify for the final round of qualifying, which begins in September, to make the 8-team octagonal. So that's CONCACAF news. Futsal. USA finished second in the CONCACAF Futsal Championship. They advanced to the FIFA Futsal World Cup in Lithuania, and they were drawn into Group F. September 14th, they will play Argentina in Vilnius. In September 17th, they will play Iran in Vilnius. And on September 20th, they will play Serbia and Klaipeda. So that's cool. We'll probably make a note of that as we get closer to that, but I just wanted to let you know that that draw happened. Mark your calendars for September 14th, 17th, and 20th. Some schedules coming up. Thank you all for listening to the content we put out. We have a lot more to go this month. It doesn't really slow down in July either. The women's national team will have an Olympic send-off series on July 1st and 5th versus Mexico, both games against Mexico, in East Hartford, Connecticut. That's 7 p.m. on June 1st, 5 p.m. on that's 7 p.m. on July 1st, 5 p.m. on July 5th. Then the U.S. men will play in the CONCACAF Gold Cup. All these games in Kansas City at Sporting Kansas City's home field, Children's Mercy Park. July 11th versus a qualifier to be determined soon. That'll happen the first week and a half of July. That'll be July 11th at 8:30. Then July 15th at 9:30, they will play Martinique. And the final match day, July 18th, will be against Canada at 5 p.m. So we finished the Gold Cup. Whoever wins that group, they play quarterfinal, semifinal, final is on August 1st. In the middle of knockouts of Gold Cup and the final of the Gold Cup, you have the women's national team playing in the Tokyo Olympics. July 21st against Sweden at 4:30 a.m., July 24th against New Zealand at 7:30 a.m., and then they will finish the group against Australia on July 27th at 7 a.m. The women are, because Tokyo or the Olympics are weird, the women are in Group G, which is the last group. They only have 3 groups, but they go A through D for the men, who have 16 teams, and the women with 12 teams go E, F, G. So I don't know. Ask the Olympics. But the United States is in Group G with Sweden, Australia, and New Zealand. And then the knockouts for the Olympics start on July 30th, and the final is on August 6th. So a lot of matches coming up. I will be covering all of them in some capacity. So make sure you subscribe to Soccer Down Here to make sure you do not miss an episode of Soccer for Us. And you'll also get that daily Soccer Down Here show, which Jason Longshore and John Nelson host. Make sure you subscribe to that on whatever podcatcher you're listening. Whatever you do, subscribe. You'll get all that content. It'll be great. Also, follow us on Twitter at Soccer for Us Pod. I'd love to hear your thoughts about every game, pre, post, during, whatever. Tweet at me. I'm usually tweeting during most matches. I didn't tweet a whole lot during the Nations League because, one, I was hyped and stuff. Two, I was actually using my phone to record video. If you were watching the Nations League, you probably saw some fans in Atlanta watching the games and reacting to goals. That was because I had to record that. So I'll probably be a little bit more active as we get later on this summer and I'm not having to record video for a national TV audience. Again, just follow us on Twitter at Soccer for Us Pod. Thank you so much for listening to this preview of the Women's National Team Summer Series against Portugal, Jamaica, and Nigeria. I hope you've enjoyed. I'm Bart. I'm out.